So today I'm going to talk about our future, shared future, and is it a fiction or a reality? And I'm going to talk about first what makes us human. You know, the future is important, but the first most important thing is to realize what makes human human. Yuval Hariri explains it very nicely. You could never convince a monkey to give you a banana by promising him limitless bananas after death in the monkey heaven. You just cannot convince almost any species to give you something in return with this equation. But I think you can certainly convince a human to give you banana or something valuable by convincing him to give him limitless bananas or something else in the heaven we believe in. And that very nicely explains that how complex we as a human species are and how do we define and look at our future. And you know, we love our future, we love predicting it. We have found many different creative ways to know about our future. Sometimes we get very desperate and we have to rely on this beautiful parrot to let us know how the day would pass. We've been very creative. Today you have me to let you know about your future. Good luck with that. But you know, going forward, thinking about our future, the most important thing is that its shared future really exists. Is it a fiction? Can we think of a system under this one earth to live on and one world to share? Can we think of something under this harmonious world framework for the common destiny? Can we think of sharing rights and shouldering obligations? To be honest, a part of me thinks shared future is certainly a fiction. With the current framework in place, the way, for example, the capitalism works, the way the nation theory works, the way our different institutions work, I think to get out of that and design and create a future which is valuable, meaningful, and shared is not that easy. It is, to me, a fiction, like in the case of money, like in the case of democracy, like in the case of other fictions Yuval Hariri talked about in his Sapiens book, one of the best reads. But of course, you know, as a human, you live on one thing. You live on thing, hope. You just cannot subtract hope because every day you wake up in the morning, you think that you can bring some change. Your day would be different from the day which has just passed. So that part of me does tell that we can do something about it. That part of me does tell that you can still do some fixes. But what is the biggest hurdle in achieving that shared future or maybe a different way of living or be a change agent is this very interesting framework which we have introduced over the past hundred of years, us versus them. We humans have evolved over time to think in terms of groups. People like us are like us, and people like somebody else are like them. And we have, made these groups based on religion. We have made these groups based on gender. We have nationalism, and sometimes you have these groups based on smoker versus non-smoker. You join a company, and that's your first day, and you are a smoker. The first friend will be the one who's also smoking, because you click very nicely. You click immediately. But then, all these boundaries, all these verticals, all these walls does not really help us in building this shared future we all want to talk about. But then, I do feel and I do think that there's a path forward. Religion, I don't go into much, difficult area to spend time on. One has to be very careful. Nationalism, I live in Pakistan, a little difficult area to sort of comment on. An area where I can actually go forward with and I'm very passionate about is, of course, gender and disability, something I've started working on. So the first thing, I've been working on the last 5-7 years is actually disability inclusion. In the last 6-7 years, one thing I've seen that the world worries about disability more than the disabled people actually worry about themselves. We have this mental model that they might not be able to live a good life, they have issues, I don't know how would they manage that, and they're not thinking like that, by the way. They are thinking something completely differently. They are thinking in terms of how can we contribute, how are we valuable, how can we make a good inclusive part of the society. So we have this sort of reverse mindset we have got based on all the myths and not actual data, because we don't really interact with them in the way we should. And And the West has really learned about it. They have tried to find a mechanism that how can we fix this issue and how to make society a more inclusive society. Unfortunately, in the motherland, in the homeland, things are not that simple. There is indeed a crisis. We don't really take disability as a disability. We don't want to fix that issue because we think it's just not valuable. And if we want to fix that issue, the numbers don't really support us. Because there are not that many people and we have that much money to spend on that many people, and disability is just not that enough number. So we play this number game. So in my research at LUMS, we look at this complete spectrum. We look at people with autism. We try to design digital aids for them so that we can help them with early diagnosis. We work with people with dyslexia so that we can help early diagnosis of dyslexia. I have met people in the last 3 years in Pakistan who were diagnosed with dyslexia at the age of 20. Something which had been done at the age of 6 and 7 when you start writing. We work with people with visual impairment, but in this case, we not only help them to improve their quality of life, but also help them to play games. How can they play games with sighted people? Then we also work with people with dementia. How can you design rehab technologies for them? We have this aging population, and dementia is gonna really destroy us with the number of people who are being affected by dementia. We need to find this inclusive mindset so that we can help them. We also work with people with physically disabled so that we can actually support them so they can become a independent part of the society, so they can live their life independently. And more importantly, one discovery which I had a couple of years ago, which has really completely changed the way I look at disability, is the issue with anxiety and depression. Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't pay attention to this issue, we'll be buried under this. It is coming. West is looking at it, but we're not ready. We have built this whole system in Pakistan where when you talk about these things, you're being considered weak. Man can't talk about it because he's been raised as a person because you can't cry. We have overburden in the society and we're not talking about these things. Our whole generation in every shift is being affected by this. Anxiety and depression. And again, if we don't pay attention to this at a national level, at a human level, we're not gonna come out of it very soon. So of course we work on designing self-care apps, we work on designing assistive apps to help these people, but this is a real crisis. For example, there's a study recently that 7% of graduate students in Colombia have some side of anxiety and depression. We're talking about top schools in the world. Good half of them is actually have depression, which is chronic. You take an example in any university in Pakistan, you will see anxiety and depression is just with high prevalence. And all we say, koi masla nahi theek ho jayega. Thoda tawajjuh diya karo. Calm down. And that kills even more. So I think we just need to make sure that we understand this thing. So when you tell somebody that calm down, it's not a calm down. It's a signal that go to hell. So we need to understand this thing, which means the most important thing in this context is not to design technologies. Of course, we do that for a living, and I can get publication out of it, and I can become an associate professor. That's a very good thing to have. But the most important thing at this stage is to raise awareness. Help people realize that this is an issue so that you can actually start focusing on that. Not even thinking about the solution, just thinking about that you can actually look at the problem. The first thing is to identify it. And slowly, when we are sort of paying attention to this awareness thing, we start looking at the mindset change. And once we have this mindset change, we become sort of inclusive mindset. And that is the key thing we need to instill in this very context. So, people talk about why do you work in this area? And the question is always, what is the economics of number versus economics of well-being? And by the way, don't be fooled about it. The number is not small. The disability in Pakistan, if you look at the number, that's maybe more than the population of most of the countries I've lived in. I've lived in Europe, and the number of disabled people we have in Pakistan actually exceeds the number of people actually live in many of the European countries. So it's not about the number game also. It's not about that we're talking about very few numbers. It's a huge number. And that number signals that we, of course, need to think about economics, but then well-being is also equally important. Something I'll come back to this at the end of this talk. Well, while working on this one, because I do that for a living, we also offer at LUMS student different projects. And every year I ask students that you have to come up with different ideas. So 3 years ago, I had different ideas, and one of the groups came to me and told me that they want to work on, street harassment and women harassment on streets and public spaces. I told them, look, let's focus on something more serious, something which is more relevant, because I don't think that happens in Pakistan. And they told me, we have a couple of females in our group, and they think that it's an issue. I said, okay, fine. You go home, you spend 3 weeks, you conduct some user research, you bring the data, show me that this is actually a problem, and if you show me the data, I'll allow you to work on that project. So they went back, they conducted interviews, they went to hospitals, they went to schools, they went to different stores, they interviewed people females on streets, and they came up with the data and told me it is a very serious issue. I looked at it, I looked at the data, and I said, yeah, but I have not seen that myself. Could you please go back and bring audio interviews? So they went back, they conducted about 12 interviews, they came back to me, I listened to the audio. I listened to the first audio from hospital. She was a worker in a hospital, and after about 7 or 8 minutes maybe, I stopped it and I said, you should start working on this project. It was a crisis. It was unbelievable. And many of us who think and sit here, especially the other half of the gender, or maybe 1/3 of the gender, we think that's not an issue. Talk to other people and you will see what is happening. So that gave birth to this Mehfooz Audit project. We started developing this application where you can actually report harassment. What you can do, you can actually record the complete episode if you were encountered by a man in a very different scenario, unfortunate scenario. And of course you can report it, and then you can press a panic button and police will come to you. And while doing that, we were approached by Punjab Safe City Authority, and they liked the work, and they said we should collaborate and maybe make this app for the whole Punjab. So what we did, actually, we launched this app also with Punjab Police, which is integrated with 15, and now with this app, you can actually call 15 at the time of incident. So that got integrated. So, you start at a very basic level, but if there is a right mechanism in place, you can actually promote it and go up all the way up. But that project was just not a project for me. That really changed the way I started looking at the other side of the mirror, behind the mirror. Something I never looked at in this way before this project. I was in complete denial that things are just working fine. Things are just not like that. And maybe the reason was that maybe I never contributed that part of the problem. I was never part of the system where I thought that a female in Careem or Uber would feel unsafe. And on the other side, I also thought that if I'm a driver, how the hell can I do something to a female, because there's a camera in place, she's an app, she can do all those things. But we realized there are enough moderns out there who are ready to do these things. So that really changed the way I started looking at this whole perspective. And also looking at disability. When you look at disability, interestingly, it tells you that it's a condition that makes it more difficult for a person to do certain activities. And if you combine that with my previous thing, I'm not saying that being a woman is a disability, but it does bring some of the disadvantages. Just because as a part of the context, you're unable to do certain things which otherwise you'd be able to do just because you have a different gender. And nicely put, one is not born, but the other becomes a woman. And there is this whole discussion that you want to be likable or you want to be ambitious. You want to be obedient or you just want to serve the purpose. And look at this picture here. This is a khatune khana ke liye waqt guzarne ka misali khaka. Ideal way that a lady should spend her day. Office jana, kitchen cleaning, house cleaning, offer to prayer, of course. Ghar ki safai, again prayer, chai, istri, bachon ki padhai, TV, namaz-e-isha, and breakfast for the morning. In the school book. I think they forgot the dinner here, maybe because I think she's allowed to order from Food Panda. But otherwise, it should have been there also. So that is what you're trying to my son in the school. That's the job of your wife. So of course he would demand, "Istri kapde raat ko nahi hue hue." So I'm not redefining the role for the lady. Who am I to redefine this role? The whole idea is she should be allowed to define for herself. It's not up to me to define for her by giving in a book that this is your role. So, and that's really changed the way for me. Yuval, again, favorite author, said, gender is a race in which some of the runners compete only for the bronze medal. Because we have designed the world in this way for them that you just can't compete for the gold. because you want to be likable. And being ambitious is a very bad idea. So I think that really gave birth to a very different project in my lab. We started working on it, gender inclusion. We're working on harassment in the streets, gender sensitivity in school context, STEM robotics and the role of gender, interactive systems for pregnant women, and gender bias in newspapers and dramas and social media. And when you look at the dramas, Pakistani dramas, if you really quantify that what is happening in the dramas, these extreme scenarios from the worst ever bahu to the worst ever saas, to the role of the woman that where you won't have to be Dure Shehwar so that she served the husband for the 40 years. So at the end she has a daughter who gets benefit and she didn't even get the benefit. To the Khalilur Rahman Kamar who tells us how to be an obedient, nice, neck, wife. All those things are really not helping the next generation. Neither the male nor the female, because we're setting all these very weird stereotypes with the help of this media, which is going to every home. So, and people also talk about, Suleman, ये तो सब बातें fashion है. आजकल लड़कियों के बारे में बात करना बहुत in है. You look cool when you talk about these things. But that's not the bloody case. Why? Because look at the numbers. I just give you one number. I have lots of numbers I can share with you. This is how the mainstream media gives space to females in newspapers. So you would, of course, expect, what is 57%? Male, for sure. And you would think that 26% would be female. Male and female here, and is neither, and female is 8%. That is the space the main media gives to females. And then when they decide to give that space to females, what are the things they talk about? In the case of Children magazine, male is being talked about as brave, care, silly, money. Female, husband, of course, fearful, afraid, and please. In the case of sports, male is man, cup, team, cricket. Female, cricket, of course, but wedding, marry, husband. We're very interested in the sixes of Shahid Afridi. We're very interested in the personal life of Sana Mir. How come as a nation we can't really decide that uske bhi record bahut achhe hain and we need to pay attention to how well she has played as a lady and not who the husband is and who the father is. This whole phenomenon is just unbelievable. But then you go further and you talk about male and female personalities. Nawaz Sharif, Imran Khan, Bilawal, representative maybe. Zainab, I could not bring that word here because I was not brave enough, because these words are just not the right words. But then Bushra, unfortunately, Reham Khan, unfortunately, Nikah, marriage wife, Asma Jangir, the only one outlier out there, brave, fearless symbol, and Maryam Nawaz, look at that, daughter, wife, innocence. Is this the only thing we can think about her when we think about her role in the politics? But that's how we have built all these associations. So I think the most important thing is not to fix these things, at a global level. The shared future at the universal level, I don't even know. The shared future is at least at the home level. You can always go back to home and start fixing there, and then maybe it can help you to progress upwards, and maybe you can have a change on a little bigger level, but it has to begin somewhere else. And I'm not really worried about the future. I think knowing a little bit too much about the future is a bad idea. We were never able to predict, and whenever we have predicted, we have done a very bad job. So we might want to forget about that, and the most important thing is that pick your own battle. For me, the future, the shared future, is about well-being. It's about inclusiveness. It's really about making sure that you can take the emotional path with the rational path. It's not about showing sympathy. Oh, I feel for you. It's about showing empathy, that I can put myself in your shoes and I feel the pain and I'm going to fix something for you. So it's really taking this journey from empathy to sympathy and really making sure that you can feel the pain. And the journey begins with me and I. If I'm not able to make sure that I can change myself, there is absolutely no way we can even think about any future, let alone shared future. And we're trapped in this revolution mindset as a nation, खास तौर पे. कोई तब्दीली आएगी, कुछ आएगा, वो सब कुछ change कर देगा, और all of a sudden we have this good golden days and everything would change. And the most important thing, as said by Annie Frank, that nobody stops you from changing yourself. Nobody stops you from starting it today for yourself in your own sphere. And then all of a sudden you become a change agent and then you start contributing. And the first duty is also, as a person, think of yourself. If you are not strong emotionally, socially, and physically, if you're not sometimes selfish enough about yourself, there is no way you can think good about the rest of the world, rest of the community. इकबाल ने बहुत खूबसूरत कहा था, at least, you know, अगर मेरा नहीं बनता ना बंद अपना तो बन. I think that's the starting point. That's where the conversation begins. And then गालिब ने इसको बहुत अच्छे तरीके से कहा कि आदमी को भी मुयस्सर नहीं इंसान होना. I think अगर आदमी ना रहे, इंसान हो जाए, तो I think most of our issues might get solved, and then shared future might be a way to move forward. I leave you with this beautiful lady, beautiful girl, beautiful message, beautiful tone, music, and with a very important message. She talks about अपनी दुनिया खुद बना. वो कितनी छोटी है, वो कितनी बड़ी है, that's up to you to define, but the idea is that you define it for yourself and you start contributing to it. Thank you very much for your time.